Hello, welcome back. Today it's all about Star Wars. Yes, Star Wars. I've promised to go over Star Wars for so long. You must be thinking that I was never going to do it, but no, it's happening today. I'm going to be doing a basic breakdown of the Star Wars Saga RPG basic mechanics. My suggestion is respond to the poll when you feel free to do so, and grab some food, some drink, get comfortable, have your questions ready because I will do my very best to answer questions where possible. And there we go. Right, here we go. There it is. Cool. Right, the poll is up. I don't expect a lot of people have played this game. I don't expect there to be a huge audience, but I am hoping that I am in a position to present you with enough information so you know how to play this game. Anyway, we'll get started. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about role-playing games. And the role-playing game I want to talk about is a Star Wars role-playing game. Why? Because I love Star Wars. It should be obvious. No, it's not necessarily obvious because this channel has done so much Dungeons and Dragons. Now, for those of you who were hoping to get, a completely different system that you've never seen before, the chances are you'll be very familiar with Star Wars Saga, the role-playing game. It is a D20 system. In other words, it uses a 20-sided dice. The other thing with the D20 system is it's very heavily based off Dungeons and Dragons Star Wars Saga. It's particularly common for the rules to look very similar to Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 or version 3. It also has a lot of elements from Dungeons and Dragons 4e, and you will notice many of the game mechanics will duplicate things you've seen in Pathfinder and in Dungeons and Dragons 5e. It's one of those game systems that's quite crunchy. There are a lot of rules, but they are quite familiar. So you should be able to keep up with this. What I'm going to do is I'm not just going to explain everything. I'm going to demonstrate with maps and miniatures. So I'm actually going to get maps and miniatures out, show you, and work my way through the basic game mechanics, with the intention of moving on and showing you the basic combat mechanics, the advanced stuff, and using the Force, because using the Force is a huge part of playing this game. Now, to give you an idea of what I'm hoping to do today, and that is to go over the basic dice checks and dice rolls in the game. Okay, that is your ability check, your skill checks, your melee, your attack rolls. Then I'm going to go through things like armor and difficulty class. There is no armor class in Star Wars Saga. Okay, so if you think there's an armor class, no, it's a different thing. It's called something else. So I'm going to go through the basics. That's difficulty class, skill checks in a bit more detail, opposing checks, which you may be familiar with, taking 10, taking 20, cooperating, using force points, because there are force points in this game. And then I'm going to give you a breakdown of a lot of the calculations for your reflex defense, fortitude defense, will defense. We've done this when I was making characters online and as a part of a live stream. Those live streams still exist. You're dealing with your skill modifier, how to figure out that, your melee attack bonuses, your ranged attack bonuses, calculating your weapon damage for a melee weapon and a ranged weapon, talking about training for characters. And then, if we have time, I will start to move us into the basic combat aspects. So things like standard actions, move actions, swift actions, full round actions, free actions, reactions, you name it, all that sort of stuff, and breaking that down. Otherwise, if I don't get it done today, I'm going to do it next week. So you don't need to worry, you're not going to miss out. Okay, let's go over to the board so you can see what's going on here. This will just make it easier for me to explain everything. So what I've done here is I've laid out two forces to demonstrate for today. The first force is made up of stormtroopers, obviously, and this force here is a collection of characters you may be familiar with. Okay, I've got Luke Skywalker over here, Lando's over there, I think it's Chewbacca. We've got Anakin over here. Could not find my Princess Leia, unfortunately, but it's been a long time since I've played this game. Okay, so let's start off with the very basics and what that looks like. So I'm going to move you over here. and give myself a little bit of space just to make it easier. And let's go through the food. Now, please ask questions. I will continually check on the chat to answer questions each time I've completed an explanation for something. So the ability check. You may be familiar with the ability check if you've already played any kind of D20 system, but the ability check looks like this. Ability check. And the ability check is made up of a D20. You roll one of those, and you add your ability modifier. Okay? It is no different to what you're used to. You're very familiar with this, I imagine, already. If you've played any D20 system, you played 5e, you can handle this. So it's no different in any way. It's exactly the same process. Now, to give you an example, I'm probably not going to roll the big dice because I'll probably take out my computer screen if I do that. But I will use a 20-sided dice here. So we make our ability check. So we decide what we want to do. Now, maybe what we're trying to do is hide from the stormtroopers. Okay, so we'd make a stealth check. And for this situation, I'm going to use the soldier character we built not so long ago. And now, we could make a stealth check, but your game master may decide that, no, I want you to make just a dexterity check. And often that will take place for a variety of different reasons. Game masters might have, it may not quite fit within the bracket or realm of what you're trying to do. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll say, okay, I'm trying to hide here in some way, and we're not using the stealth modifier in this case, although there is a skill called stealth, okay, rather than an ability check. And so we roll our 20-sided dice, and I got a 10, and then we would add that to the ability that we have for our character, which would be dexterity. Now, this character I'm using is got a modifier which is a 3, so you would add 10 to 3 and you get 13. So your total result for that would be a 13, okay? And that would then be compared to a DC. Now, I might have set the DC as a 15, so you would fail, and then, of course, that means you wouldn't be hidden. So DC might be 15, but the total of a 10 and 3 only comes to 13. You need to get equal to or greater than. It's the same sort of process you've seen in games before. So it's very, very simple to remember. Hello, how's it going, Fred Hubber? How are you? Prepare, cook, and survive. Use the force to throw opponent off a cliff. Yes, you could do that using telekinetic powers. Ancient Dragon, hello, how are you? Square Peg, hello. AC, DC, SP, yes, I know, there's lots of things going on here. DC just means difficulty class, that's it. Hello, Michael, how are you? Michael is a patron and supports me on Patreon. And Michael won the Call of Cthulhu giveaway. So you're going to getting one of these dice. I don't know if it'll necessarily be exactly that one, but it'll be one of those at some point. So that's your ability check. For those of you who were interested, that's how it works. The next one is pretty similar to what you had before. The only difference is if I can rub this out. And it didn't come off very well. Is there a paper towel? Yes, there is. Pardon me, I just found that my markers don't come off quite the way I would like, and I need it to remove, so let's get rid of this. Oh, this is staining really badly, isn't it? And all this to come off. Oh, man, these new markers that they're making, they're like glue. Hang on. Okay, let's try again, see if I can get this to come off. Otherwise my whiteboard's not going to be much good to me if it's covered in black marks. I'm going to use a different pen. Black pen, you're going to get relegated to the out of my way, please. And okay, let's see if that's going to actually mostly not as good as I would hope. But I guess I have no choice but to sort of put up with that. dry that off. Okay, so is it dry? Yes. So skill checks. Okay. Now with a skill check, it's really simple. You're using your skill modifier, and I will explain how to actually figure out your skill modifier shortly. So for a skill check, maybe we decided instead of using a dexterity ability check, we're going to use a skill check. And in this case, we'll use something like stealth for our check. And the Game Master will set your DC. And once they've set the DC, all you need to do is roll a 20-sided dice and add the skill modifier that you have. So I'll roll my dice. I've got a 15. We add that to the modifier for our character, and the soldier that we built has a stealth. I believe they're a level 2 character. They have a stealth of 4, which is certainly better than our dexterity. So 15 plus 4 is 19. And remember how I had set the DC to hide from the stormtroopers as DC 15? Well, we succeed this time because we got equal to or greater than. So it's exactly the same as what you're familiar with most versions of Dungeons and Dragons or any D20 system. So making a skill check, making an ability check, exactly the same. There's nothing really different in it. Okay, so nice and easy for you to remember. Any questions? You're excited about those dice? I'm excited to be able to give people away a whole bunch of dice. And yeah, the fact that somebody else is organising it all and paying for it all is wonderful. Thank you, D&D Well. If you roll bad, you can put in it in a sock and intimidate it. Yeah, of course you could. Yes, yes, yes. Why not? Okay, let's go with the next one. And that is making a melee attack. Now, when you're making a melee attack, it's going to look a little different. And with hopefully this blue mark comes off. The black mark is probably going to give me trouble, right? And then I have to get my pen out. Yeah. So no more black marker. We obviously know that black marker is bad. Black marker bad. Blue marker better. So we're going to do I'll do a melee one first and then I'll do a ranged. Or should I do the ranged first? No, we'll do the ranged since we're already at distance. We can do that probably easier that way. Okay, all right. Now I will explain how you do the calculations for figuring out your attack bonuses very shortly. So ranged attack. Okay, it looks very simple. It is simply a d20 plus your attack bonus. That's it. Now you will have an attack bonus for ranged and for melee. They will be different. Not always, but most of the time they will be different. So as you can see, it's exactly the same as what you're used to when you're playing any version of Dungeons and Dragons. So you can handle this. So if Luke Skywalker with his pistol here wants to shoot through this arrow slit at one of the stormtroopers over here, he can. The simplest way to deal with this is you roll your 20-sided dice. I got a 12. I add my ranged attack bonus. Now there are penalties in this game. So in other words, when you're rolling, you need to check to see if you are too far away. The range here is fine. The range is usually measured in this game. It's usually measured in squares. So your range is very easy to figure out. You're not dealing with meters. You're not dealing with feet or inches or anything like that. You're just measuring in squares. So he fires with his gun. We have a +5, so we add our 5 to that. And that comes to a 17. And it needs to be equal to or greater than the stormtroopers' reflex defense. Reflex defense is like armor class, for those of you who are sort of familiar with armor class. So reflex defense is like armor class in Dungeons in Star Wars Saga. It's the same sort of thing. So our reflex defense for our stormtrooper is a 16, and I got a total of 17. So we actually hit the target, which means we get to actually do some damage. And with the weapon that we've got, you would, and I will roll damage later, I suppose. We can do that probably. We can probably do that now. In this case, ranges are one of those funny things where you don't really get to add very much. It's just going to be the dice. You get 3 8-sided dice with his weapon, I believe, and you just add those up. I got a 7, a 1, and an 8. The grand total of 16, and that'll be 16 hit points because Star Wars Saga uses hit points as well. Should be pretty obvious by now. So you can handle that. You've done this sort of stuff before. Easy peasy. It's not hard for you to figure out. Correct? Okay. Now, let me get rid of this, and we'll make a melee attack this time. Very quickly, because it's the same process as the ranged attack. And then we'll move on to the other game mechanics. Melee. Okay. All right. Now, with melee attacks, you do not need to worry about your range. You don't have range penalties with a melee attack. You only have penalties for shooting when you're doing ranged attacks. So that's the only thing you want to concern yourself with, is like when you're doing ranged, make sure you're not shooting beyond the range of the weapon. All right, so I'm going to move this a little bit further over to roughly about here. And I'm going to move one of these miniatures up to engage. Right, so we'll get our lightsaber wielding individual to come up to here, and they attack one of the stormtroopers. So how does that look? Pretty simple. You roll a 20-sided dice. I got a 6. Okay, and we add it to our attack modifier, or should I say our attack bonus. In this case, we're going to use a Jedi, since we've got a Jedi character here, and they've got a lightsaber, and they get a +4, so that would be 4 to our dice roll, and that comes to a grand total of only 10. And unfortunately, remember, the reflex defense for our stormtrooper is 16, and we needed to get equal to or greater than, and since we only got 10, we got less than, so we miss our target. Now, if we roll it again, and I get an 11, well, that would still be a miss, because 11 and 4 is only 15, still a miss. Roll a 1. If you roll a 1 in this game, you automatically miss. It's the same that you're used to in D&D 5e and other versions of Dungeons & Dragons 4e, and also, is it 4e? No, it would be 3.5, not 4e. 4e's got a different critical hit system and failure system. Roll again. No. So if we are we going to get a number that allows us to actually strike, or am I going to just roll low numbers all night? Apparently I'm going to roll numbers. Okay, here we go. 18. So 18 plus the 4 for our attack with our lightsaber. If we actually hit, it's going to be 22. 22 would be greater than the reflex defense of the stormtrooper, so we can strike. Now, with regard to dice for this, you'll find that the calculation is a little odd in terms of damage, but I can assure you that the damage modifier that you're using, in this case, is a 3 for this character. Almost all the time you'll be using strength for melee attacks. Whether it's a weapon that seems like it's very light, you won't see a lot of concepts that say something like finesse. If you're familiar with 5e, you won't see that sort of thing. And you roll 2 8-sided dice for the damage. So we'll get this out of the way for now. I'll put you over here. That's going to be confusing. Okay, so a 3, a 6, that's 9. And we add another 3. We get a grand total of, what is that? That's 9, 12. 12 hit points are lost from the blow, okay? As long as we hit, which we did. So that's how you would use your lightsaber in a melee attack. And of course you can have standard weapons that aren't lightsabers as well to make attacks with. So that is all of the very basics around just the dice rolls. Everything in the game is now based on those 4 different types of dice rolls: ability checks, skill checks, melee attacks, ranged attacks. Everything's based off that. Did anybody have any questions? Let's have a look here. Let's have a look at chat. Still giggling from last night's stream. I know everybody had a good time. We got to definitely do another character the way we did it last time. Making that wizard last night was... or yesterday was really, really good. It came off really well, and we had a lot of people participating. Yes, so I totally get what you mean by that. Now, I would use the force to re-roll or to push the 20-sided dice to the number that I desired. Well, we'll get to force power soon enough. Now, how many hit points does a stormtrooper have in this case? Since we did 12 points of damage, I suppose you're probably wanting to know. I didn't really want to talk too much about it, but if you did 12 points of damage to a stormtrooper, that would probably kill your stormtrooper. And when your enemies get to 0 hit points, they're dead. Your heroic classes, the player characters, when they reach 0, they're not dead. It's possible to kill them outright, but there's some complications around that. I won't explain it just yet because it's going to be too much. But that would definitely, 12 would take out a stormtrooper. You're right. So goodbye to a stormtrooper. Sorry about that, buddy. You should have made sure you hit first time. Okay. Magnet installed in the die. Turn off the... Right. Sure. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know about that. Stormtroopers are actually very, very dangerous in this game. If you get hit, it hurts. Okay. Let's go over another rule that we have in this game. And that is, let's start breaking down the nuanced stuff. That is the basic mechanics. You've already seen that I've talked about difficulty class, where difficulty class, or DC, is where you have to get greater than or equal to. Yep. It's very, very basic. But I suppose there's one thing that a lot of people will be asking is, since I'm relatively familiar with difficulty class, Fred, what happens if somebody wants to make another check? What if they fail the check the first time round? Can they reattempt to make a DC check? Okay, and you'll find in Star Wars Saga they have DCs for everything. There isn't really a lot required by the Dungeon Master, or should I say the Game Master, to determine what is going to work or not. It's a DC, and so they can be 10, 15, 20, etc. Okay, so that's how difficult the task is. Yes, a skill check. If you fail a skill check, you can retry unless it states otherwise. If there's a feature in the game that states you cannot retry this, and there are many, many skills where it says you cannot retry, then you can't retry it. There will be situations where it doesn't make sense because the failure will not really permit you to try to make another skill check or even another ability check because of the failure and the consequences that go with that. Because there are consequences for failure. If you're not rolling dice, if you're rolling dice and there's no failure, then you wouldn't do it. You'll find all the information on page 58 for difficulty class and retrying a skill check in the core rulebook. There's another thing called the opposed checks. And if you've played 5e, you'll recognize the opposed checks as being a contest. So opposed checks are where you're having a competition. Okay, opposed checks. And how might that look? Well, let's use strength. I think that's probably the best way to explain this is let's use strength as an example. So what happens if Anakin here decides to push the stormtrooper, and the stormtrooper wants to resist that, and so they would be resisting with an opposing strength check. So let's do a strength check. There's no DC in this case, okay? And so we're going to go A for Anakin, and the stormtrooper is T. And we will do a dice roll off for them. So this would be a good example of where we're using an ability check as part of an opposed check. Yep. So we get our Jedi stats. Okay, so Anakin has a +2 for their strength. So you roll that's the 2. That's our bonus. It's our ability modifier, and then we roll a 4-sided dice. We add them together. We get 6 for Anakin as he tries to push, and then the stormtrooper would resist that. Stormtroopers aren't that strong, but they're not actually that weak either. So you've got a bit of a problem if you're fighting your way through anything that's particularly strong. Because there's not a lot of change in modifiers in this game, you can wind up kind of stuck with all sorts of problems if you select a character and you weren't aware that they were quite strong. But in this case, Stormtroopers aren't that strong. Where is it? Sorry, my glasses are making it difficult to see. Oh, there we go. They have a +1, so they have only a small modifier. Roll a 20-sided dice. It's an ability check. I rolled a 4. Stormtrooper only got 5. 1 and 4 is 5. If you get equal to, nothing happens. Okay? It's a stalemate. You have to get greater than. So whoever got the greatest one is the one who wins the pushing war. So Anakin gets to push the Stormtrooper or move them around or push them over. That would be an opposed check. You won't necessarily see an opposed check in this game that often. It does come up, but it's not hugely common. Probably the most often that you'll see something like an opposed check in Star Wars Saga is when you are doing something like a grapple or a grab. There is a differentiation between grapple and grab in Star Wars Saga. What's this? Yeah, it is. Now, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to show you, because you can see it's dead simple. It's very, very basic. It's all the stuff you already know. So there's not the big, huge barriers that you might think that exist, just don't exist. Yep. Okay. The wizard build. Yeah, well, don't worry. We're doing the priest next week. We're building a priest for Shadow Dark. And I have to say, building a character for Shadow Dark is so much more fun than I could imagine. Hi, Ryan. How are you? I prefer Star Wars Force and Destiny rule sets. Well, that's fine. You can prefer whatever you want. I'm demonstrating what I know, Ryan. So Force and Destiny rule sets aren't really rule sets that I'm very familiar with. Stormtroopers get -20 on all hit rolls when using blasters. I'm sure that's well, not in the game. They are much more deadly. They're not like in the movies. They really do hurt. And the problem is that when you're shooting with a laser pistol or a laser gun, they just mess you up really bad, and it takes a long time to heal in this game. Yes, a Jedi Knight would definitely in one blow take out a Stormtrooper. Just because of the way how the game has been built. Yeah, absolutely. Not going to be a problem at all. Okay, next. Now, you may be aware of this mechanic. You may not be aware of this mechanic. But these are times you don't normally use them when you're making attacks. Okay? And this is the taking 10. Take 10 mechanic. Take 10 is where you, instead of rolling a 20-sided dice, you simply take the 20 dice as being a 10. So instead of actually rolling, you don't roll. Instead, you count that whatever you rolled on the dice is going to be a 10 automatically. It's called taking 10. And then you add that to whatever your bonus is. So for Anakin and his strength, it would be a +2. And so you would get 12. Now, there are some conditions about when you can use taking 10. Taking 10 is almost never used while you're in a combat, and for good reason. And it's almost always used outside of combat. Taking 10 is when you can't be rushed. Whatever you're doing, you need to have time so you can continue to perform the task over and over again. You can't be rushed, you can't be distracted, and you can't be under threat. Okay, so you can't be rushed, you can't be distracted, and you can't be under threat. So if you're in a battle, you're under threat, so it doesn't count. You can't use taking 10. You can't be distracted, so you can't be doing something else, and you can't be rushed. So you need to have plenty of time to perform it. But whatever the check is, it is allowed to be something that you can fail. In other words, okay, if there's a chance for failure, you can do it. You can use taking 10. So that sort of flattens your math. And so whatever you get, in this case, we get a 10 and a 2, so that would be 10 plus 2 equals 12. And we would compare that with our DC, whatever our DC is going to be. Okay, very simple. You're normally going to use taking 10 with an ability check or a skill check outside of combat. So that's taking 10. Next, some of you who have played version 3 or 3.5 of D&D or other D20 systems will be very familiar with taking 10, and taking 20 is the next one. Taking 20 is one of those times where instead of rolling a 20-sided dice to determine the result, we would simply determine that whatever you rolled on the 20-sided dice is a 20. You get a 20, no matter what. Yep. There are very, very strict conditions or criteria for using taking 20. You would not apply it to an opposing check because there's a chance of failure. Okay, there's penalties, there's consequences for failure, so you really can't do it there. So you're going to have to look at a different option for this. Taking 10 means you get a 20 on the dice roll. You need to have plenty of time to perform the task, and there can't be any major penalty for failure. So if the only chance of failure is you did not perform the task, you can continue to do it. Maybe it's something as simple as you tying up a rope, okay? Just tying a knot. You can perform it again. Maybe you're trying to smash open a door, so I guess, or move something that's quite heavy. So for example, there is a door here. If we have this character move over to there, and they're going to try to make a strength check to try to bust down the door, instead of rolling the dice over and over again, until they finally roll a 20 on the 20-sided dice to get whatever they have to hit in terms of a DC, okay, there is no real chance of failure. There's no real penalty. There's nothing really as a major consequence. So we can keep retrying busting the door down. Taking 20 would potentially be used for disabling a computer system, or as long as there's no alarm set in it, or opening a lock as long as it's no trap or there's no alarm system connected to it. So you can continue to repeatedly try to open the door or bust it down. So that would look like this. You'd get 20, and then whatever your strength modifier is for your trying to bust down your door. In this case, this character has a 1 as their bonus, and 20 plus 1 gives you 21. 20 and 1, sorry. 20 and 1. It's 1 equals 21. That's our result. And if our DC was 20, we succeed. So we need to get equal to or greater than. It's usually going to be using a DC system. Okay, we're not using reflex. You almost never be using reflex with taking 20. Taking 20 is always going to be for skills and ability checks. Okay, when you're not using an opposed check of some kind. All right, so that's taking 20. I just need some water and then I will continue. There's a lot of nuances coming up next. This is where things may start to get a bit complicated. You could use the skill or that check for people in a cantina who are arm wrestling perhaps. Okay, so I'm going to explain how you use cooperate in a second, which is what you understand in 5e as the help action. The help action looks a little different. But give me a second and I'll do that. Okay, cooperate is actually up next. That was the next thing we needed to cover. So cooperate is when more than one individual maybe is trying to bust down this door. So maybe we get Chewbacca to come in and help. And this is the cooperate mechanic. Cooperation. Now, cooperation is one of those things where the DC is 10 to give a +2 bonus. Okay? So if you're going to help, you decide who is the primary person who's going to try to open the door. If only 2 people can get in the space to lean on the door and bust it open, then only 2 people can be involved in the process, which means that Anakin will not be able to help, is that Han Solo or somebody else? I don't know. Lando, they will have to stand and watch. They can't assist. There needs to be enough space in there for them to be able to get in there and do it. So there will be some limits on when you can use cooperation, much like if you're using the help action in 5e. So the DC for the person who is not doing the primary task is DC 10. So it's very easy to perform usually. And in this case, we'll make a strength ability check. Okay, so we decide that Chewbacca is probably a lot stronger. So we'll get Chewbacca to actually try to bust down the door for us. But before we do that, and before Chewbacca can get the +2 bonus on their strength check, we need Luke Skywalker to make a dice roll. So roll your 10-sided dice. This is one time when you cannot use taking 10. You cannot use taking 10 or taking 20 on a cooperation mechanic, okay? So Luke Skywalker rolls a 20-sided dice, gets a 14, adds their strength modifier, which in this case is a +1. You get 15, and because you get 15, you succeed. You have now given Chewbacca a +2 bonus to whatever they roll. Yep. And if the door is 20, a DC 20 to get open, and hopefully Chewbacca can actually make that happen now. And then, of course, Chewbacca would take their bonus, and I can't honestly remember what Chewbacca's bonus is, but I would imagine it's probably somewhere like a +3 for your strength modifier. I don't honestly remember if it is or not, but that's what we'll use. And then, of course, you get your bonus from Luke Skywalker, who was successful in cooperating and helping Chewbacca. Adds another 2, and then we roll our 20-sided dice and see if we succeed in busting down the door. So I got a 20. Okay, so 20 and 3 and 2 becomes 25. So Chewbacca, with the help of Luke Skywalker, successfully busts down the door. So that's how the help action works. You can use a type of help which is called something else. It's called aid another, okay? Aid another is used for in combat. Cooperation is used outside of combat when you're using ability checks and skill checks. It is almost never used inside combat. It is primarily designed for using the abilities and skills, not attacks of any kind. So that's sort of the basics around that. Now I've already kind of explained how an attack roll works, but I will at least write that up while I explain part of the next thing that we've got to deal with. So attack roll. Attack roll. Now, I've already demonstrated an attack roll before, but this is your basics, right? You have to get equal to or greater than. So this is so attack roll. It's got to be equal to or greater than the reflex defense. That's it. All right. And that's on page 144 of the core book. Equal to or greater than. So it's exactly the same as making an attack roll against armor class. The only thing is that armor class is now called reflex defense, and it's calculated slightly differently. Okay. Let's have a look at chat and see if I need to catch up on anything. Okay, no, cool. Let's get into the weeds now. For those of you who are wondering, where is the advantage, disadvantage mechanic in this game? Well, it's not called advantage or disadvantage in this game. It's called the reroll. So reroll. And this is where you get to reroll a 20-sided dice. So when you have one of these dice rolls involved, you get to do a reroll. Rerolls can work a couple of different ways. and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of demonstrate that process for you. There are a trillion different rerolls in Star Wars Saga. The whole game system is based off rerolling your dice to give you some additional benefit. Okay? So for those of you who are wondering, you know, how easy it is to get a reroll in this game, like literally everything is based on trying to reroll something, whether it be an ability check, a skill check, an attack roll, use the force checks, you name it, under the sun, they just come. So anytime you roll a 20-sided dice, this may come into play. And there's two ways and two variations that you'll tend to come across. And all of this is on page 59 of the book. One, you see your dice result and you say, okay, I have a reroll. I can choose to reroll or reroll that same dice or roll another dice. It really doesn't matter. You don't have to necessarily use the same dice, but you get to roll another dice. There'll be two ways this works. You can choose to do it or you can choose not to do it. So you have to make that decision ahead of time. There are usually two options available to you. One, if I decide I don't like my 13 and I need it to be higher, I can re-roll it. I'm just going to consider this the same dice. And whatever I roll on the second time round is the one I have to keep. So I am gambling a little bit here that I will do better. If I needed to have a number that was better than a 13 and I only get an 8, I have to keep the 8, I lose the 13. So that's one way that a re-roll can work in Star Wars Saga. And that each feature always spells out exactly how that's used. Now, what if I decide, okay, I'm rolling my dice roll, whether it's to push down these doors or shoot somebody, it doesn't matter. Because there are lots of re-rolls for making attacks as well. So I get a 14. Okay, well, I've got a re-roll for making attacks. I could actually use this character. They're trying to shoot at the stormtroopers. I'm actually happy with that. I don't want to re-roll, so I won't bother using my re-roll. Yep. Or if I get a nice low number, so I get a 4, and I know I'm not going to hit the stormtroopers. So I've got a re-roll. And sometimes you'll get a re-roll that looks like this. I get a 4, I get a re-roll, and when I make the re-roll, I can pick either number. In other words, I can pick the highest of the two dice rolls. Okay? This is what you call advantage in D&D 5e. Yep. So I got a 19. The first roll was a 4, and the second one is a 19. I get to keep the second roll. Some mechanics will work that way. You'll never see a mechanic where you roll 2 dice. Okay? There's never a mechanic in the game usually where you roll 2 dice and take the highest result. It's always based on you roll 1 dice first, and then you make a decision about whether you roll a second dice. Yep. And you'll never see a mechanic that is disadvantaged where you roll 2 dice and take the lowest result. There's no mechanics, as far as I remember, in Star Wars Saga where you have that kind of penalty involved. The penalties in Star Wars Saga look very different. This is really your big advantage, is the reroll. So penalties in this game aren't determined by disadvantage penalties. You will get a -1, a -2, a -5, and if you're really unlucky, you might get, and it's very rare, a -10. So it's all numerical penalties. There's never a penalty in terms of rolling dice. Rolling dice in this game is always supposed to be fun, and any mechanic they put forward is always supposed to make you quite excited about the possibility rather than depressed that you're probably going to have to take the lowest result. Does that make sense? But it does add a lot of complexity because you have to remember when to take away -1, -2, -5, or -10. So quite a lot going on there. I'm going to talk about using force points in a second, but I just want to check to see how our chat is going. All right. Okay. So drink of water. Let's get into force points. Okay. Everybody in this game, every character, no matter whether you are a Jedi or not, everybody who is a character gets force points, and everybody can use force points because there's a particular way of using them. So using force points. So I think most of you by now have started to realize that what you're looking at here is so familiar and you're used to doing this already. It is a free action. There aren't that many free actions, but this is definitely one of them. And you get a 6-sided dice when you're using it. And you get to add it to a couple of different things. So you can add your 6-sided dice roll, whatever you're rolling. Yep. When you decide to use it, you add it to whatever other dice roll you've made. So I rolled a 6, so I get to add 6 when I use my force points. I can add that to a single attack. So if I am trying to make an attack with Anakin Skywalker here, with my lightsaber, I can add that to my 20-sided dice roll when I make my attack against them. Does that make sense? So instead of just rolling the 20-sided dice, I would make my attack with Anakin Skywalker, and I'd get to roll a 6-sided dice as well. And I got a critical, and a 20 in Star Wars Saga is a critical. It's bad news for the enemy, for sure. So that would come to 26, plus I believe the modifier for this Jedi that we're using today is a 4. So we'd wind up with a grand total of 6, 4, 20, comes to 30. So more than the armor class of a Stormtrooper who's only got a reflex defense, okay, of 16, so that's going to be equal to or greater than. We hit our target, but it doesn't matter. When you roll a 20, you ignore all the modifiers. They don't come into play, so you don't need to worry about any of that, okay? So that is one way you can use it. But you can also add your force point dice roll to a skill check or an ability check. So either one of those. Now when you get to level 8, you get to have 2 of these dice. So instead of rolling 1 of these dice for using your force points, okay, so it means one of the great things about force points is it definitely gives you quite a significant boost to your dice rolls, and you're always adding it to a 20-sided dice roll. There's always going to be a 20-sided dice roll involved somewhere along the way, yeah? But at level 8, you get to roll 2 of these, you remove the lowest number, and you keep the highest number to add to whatever your dice roll is going to be with your d20. So I add my 5 and my 9, 10 together. Yep. Now when you get to level 15, this is character level 15. You do not need to worry about multi-classing. The game is built around multi-classing to accommodate all of that. You get to roll 3 of these. You take away the lowest numbers, you keep the highest number, and you roll that with your 20-sided dice. You add the 2 numbers together. So that's how your force points work. It's a fairly significant benefit. You want to use them. You only get a few. At level 1, you'll only get 5. As you level up, you will get more of them. And that's sort of how the game works. It's like you get more as you level up. Okay, let's go back to chat, and I'm going to start showing you how to calculate all this stuff in a second. Now, one of the benefits to this system, although it looks kind of like advantage, disadvantage, the benefit is you do not need to worry about, you know, when you make in D&D 5e, if you roll with disadvantage and you roll 2 dice, and you've already made the roll, and then somebody says, oh, but I want to apply advantage to this. But they've already rolled the 2 dice, and you're like, okay, so which dice do I take now? It should have only been 1 dice roll. You don't have any of that issue. There's none of that issue whatsoever in the game. It doesn't come into play. Does that make sense? All right, so this is why re-rolling is a better mechanic, I think, in many respects, to rolling advantage where you roll 2 dice at the same time. It's probably better to roll the other dice after, once you've had a chance to make a decision about what's going to happen. Timing is important. Okay, next. Prepare, cook and survive. Hello, how are you? Dungeons and Chronics, prepare, cook and survive. Right, give a player advantage is really good for group morale, I find. Yes, but also, look, honestly, a reroll, when you roll a 1 and you get a reroll, it's really obvious you're going to take the reroll. Yeah, and so it still works in the same way. It's just the timing and how you apply it. How's it going, Overboard? Overboard is a patron and a moderator, and he's got his own YouTube channel. Deals with miniatures and terrain and reviews and stuff like that. How are you doing? How's it going, Joe? All right, let's do some calculations. This is all the math stuff. Now, we did a lot of this in character creation. I didn't cover all of it necessarily that clearly, but this is where I am going to do that right now, is calculations for various things. So first off, now if you want to see how I did this in when we were building classes, all those live streams still exist for all of the classes. So you don't need, I'm not going to get rid of them. They're not going to get hidden. None of that nonsense anymore. Okay. So to actually calculate the armor class of your character, it's very simple. Well, it's not that simple, but we'll deal with it. 10 It's always 10 plus your heroic level. Your heroic level is basically your character level. So if you have 2 levels of Jedi, then your heroic level is 2. Okay? If you are multi-classed, 2 levels in Jedi and 2 levels in Soldier, then your heroic level is 4, because you add the 2 classes that you have selected, or heroic classes, together. Does that make sense? Then we also add our... Now, if we've got armor, this is where you might find it a little bit. You either get to use the heroic level or your armor bonus, which is AB. Okay, armor bonus. At low levels, armor is probably going to be more useful to you. At higher levels, you won't care about armor because your heroic level will be better. There are benefits to still wearing armor, even though it's not necessarily going to be that useful to your reflex defense. But at higher levels, you'll find your heroic level overshadows your armor bonus. We also need to add our dexterity modifier. And some classes will have a class bonus. Not all classes, but some. If we have natural armor, then we add our natural armor bonus as well. This is complicated, I realize. And then, depending on our size, there is no size modifier for a medium creature, but size modifier might be in play as well. So size modifiers do affect your reflex defense. In other words, it's going to wind up being a minus if you're quite large, and if you're quite small, it's going to be a positive number. So that's how you calculate your reflex defense. And all the information is in the core book on page 36 and page 145. I reckon page 145 is your best bet. It's got your best breakdown of doing that calculation. And I am totally aware that reflex defense looks like a god-awful pain in the ass to calculate. But there is a formula, and it's written out in a formula line. It's not hidden in the text anywhere. It's right below. You can just follow the formula they've put in. So it's actually not too bad. And once you've got it figured out, you don't really have to change it that often. You only have to change it every time you level up. Okay? What do you got here? So there's a lot of stackable bonuses. Yes, we got Star Wars today. Armor equals ABS. Got it. What if we don't have a 6-pack abs? Nice. Okay, next calculation. Let's not get too distracted, since I'm supposed to be working, aren't I? So our next calculation is, now there are 3 defenses that you're going to need to have figured out. And the next one is the fortitude defense. Fortitude is exactly what you think it is. Fortitude doesn't get used that often, but it will come into play eventually. It's like when you're dealing with anything that uses your constitution. That's really what it is. It's like making a constitution saving throw. So the calculation is 10 plus your heroic level. You do not include armor into your fortitude defense. Only your heroic level, okay? Whatever level your character is, your ultimate, even if you're multi-classing, that's what you put in here. So if I'm level 4, then the number 4 goes there. Then I add my constitution modifier. Yep. Some classes will have a class bonus for fortitude defense, but not all of them. Add your class bonus. And if you have equipment that would help you deal with this sort of stuff, assist you in your fortitude defense, and there are things out there that can, your equipment bonus. And all the information on it is on the same page. It's 145 is the best page, and page 36. So that's how you calculate your fortitude defense. It's actually easier to calculate this than the reflex defense. And there are less numbers involved in the fortitude defense than your reflex. Okay, so that's how you calculate that one. Next, we have will defense. Now, will defense is basically you trying to retain your faculties and somebody not take over you. This is like making a wisdom saving throw, or even in some ways a charisma saving throw, but it's, I would say, more like a wisdom saving throw in D&D 5e. So how do you calculate it? It's 10, always 10 with these defenses. Your heroic level, whatever that might be. Your wisdom modifier. If you have a class that gives you a bonus to it, then you add your class bonus if you have one. And that's it. So calculating this one is probably even easier. So if your level is 4, then you put that there. And then if we have a wisdom modifier of, say, 1, then we'd add that one. And if we have a class bonus, and usually your class bonus, if you have one, is probably usually no more than a 1. Okay, so 10 for 1, and 1 in this case would be 16 for your will defense. Will defense is going to be used for something like mind trick. So there's a force power called mind trick in the game, which you're probably very familiar with if you watch the Star Wars movies. That's what you would use it for. So that's how you figure out your defenses. Hello, Justin. How are you? You've never used a reflect save? Yeah. So, well, this is like I said, a reflex defense. It's basically like a save. I've been lurking while working. Always good to catch a video and see Star Wars RPG options. Well, I'm big on Star Wars. Okay, there's a couple more equations that I'll give you, so you know what they look like, and then we're going to go into actions, I believe, probably after I take a break because we're getting close to that time. But a couple more formulas. So your skill modifier. Now, we did this when we were doing character building, but the calculation for a skill modifier, this is the number that you add to a 20-sided dice roll, is going to be the following. Modifier. It is half your character level. Rounded down. Half character level. Plus your ability modifier, whichever ability modifier you're using. Okay, for whatever the skill is. And then miscellaneous modifiers. Sometimes there are miscellaneous modifiers in this game. All the information for calculating that is on page 57 of the core book. So, relatively easy. If you have a character and they are level 2, you would add a +1, half your character level. If they have an ability modifier of 1 or 2, so maybe let's say it's 2, okay, you'd add that. And if you have a miscellaneous bonus, often a miscellaneous bonus might be something like, if you are trained in something, you will always, if you're trained, you always get a +5. So I would add 5. So my skill modifier in the end would be, because I'm trained, 5. My ability modifier, which in this case we'll say is 2. And half my level, because I'm level 2, it comes down to level 1. It comes down to 1, not level 1. It comes from level 2 down to a 1. So that is a total of 8. So we get a modifier of 8 in the end. That's how you figure that one out. Pretty simple. If we are doing something like our melee attack bonus, this is the number we add to our attack roll with our 20-sided dice roll. So melee attack bonus looks like this. Melee attack bonus. And it is your base attack bonus. So B, A, B. You've probably seen this in 3.5, people. It's probably not quite familiar. Not everybody has a base attack bonus at level 1. Some classes will have 0. Your strength modifier. And that's it. When you make an attack, that's the only things you need to worry about, is your base attack bonus and your strength modifier. And say, for example, if I have a Jedi, this character here, and I'm trying to figure that out, my base attack bonus for a level 2 Jedi is a +1. Okay, that's that one. And then when I look at my When I look at my strength modifier, it's only a 2. So we get 2. Does that make sense? Pretty simple. Not too hard to forget or remember. To forget or remember? One of those. Now, I wanted to make sure I got ranged attacks, base attack. Yep, okay, that's good. So we've got that one. And then your ranged attacks, as you may have suspected, it's going to look very, very similar. Ranged attack bonus would be it's almost the same process, but slightly different numbers going in place here. So we'll get rid of this. So your base attack bonus plus your dexterity modifier this time, not your strength modifier, and range penalty. Because some weapons have restrictions on range, so you need to add that in. You do not ever add anything else. It's just those 3 numbers, okay? And if you don't have a range penalty, then you don't need to add it. So, for example, our character over here who is shooting through the arrow slit or the slit in the wall would be going base, if they're level 2, their base attack is a 2. Their dexterity modifier is a 3. And we're not shooting beyond their range in this case because it's pretty close. So there's no range penalty, so we just add those 2 numbers up. 2 and 3 becomes 5. And that would be our modifier for our range. So our ranged attack bonus would be that. Yep. Is that clear? Hopefully it is. I am top of the hour. But I'm going to give you 2 more formulas before I walk away and take a quick break. And then I'll come back and we will try to squeeze in any questions or just go over some of the basic combat mechanics, because that's probably going to take up a lot more time. Melee, weapon damage. All right. How do we work out what our bonus is for that? Pretty simple. It is your weapon damage dice. Whatever your weapon damage dice is, you add that. Half your heroic level, which is half your character level, okay? Your strength modifier. Whatever your strength modifier is. So there's 3 things that come into play, and it's all on page 145 if you're wondering. So how might that look? So if our weapon damage is a lightsaber, for example, so the weapon damage in this case would be those 2 dice for a lightsaber, 2 8-sided dice. Our heroic level, half our heroic level, our Jedi is only level 2, so that would be a +1. And then our strength modifier, so whatever our strength modifier is, we'd add for our Jedi, and that's a +2. So our bonus is only going to be a +3 added to 2 8-sided dice for our Jedi over here. That's how you would work out your melee weapon damage. Okay, nice and simple. Not hard. You've seen this sort of stuff before. I think the only thing you may not be familiar with is adding, a lot of you if playing 5e are using a proficiency bonus rather than half your level. So the system is just designed slightly different. Progression will probably be a bit more extensive because at level 20, if you ever get to level 20, you would have a bonus. Half your level would be 10, which is quite a big number. All right, so let's get rid of melee and let's do ranged weapon damage. Ranged. Okay, in this case, again, it's your weapon damage dice, half your heroic level, and there's no other modifier added. So ranged attacks are really easy to figure out. So if we're using, say, a blaster carbine or a blaster pistol, so if we're using a blaster pistol, this character's using a blaster pistol right here, shooting this through the arrow slit, the formula for them is nice and simple. you get to use, if I can find enough of them. Oh, no, we'll use the other one because we'll use a blaster carbine. It's going to be a little bit easier. Blaster carbine. Yeah, come on, shoot through there. Got a blaster carbine. It's going to be 1, 2, 3. Have I got them? Yes. That's my weapon dice for a blaster carbine. It's 3 8-sided dice. And I only add half my level. And in this case, let's say Chewbacca is only level 2, so you only add a 1 to it. So a modifier for the damage is only 1, and you add those dice. That's how you work out your ranged weapon damage. There's nothing else. It's one of the simplest formulas that you'll need to deal with in the game. Now, any character who is trained, I'm going to do this, and then we will take a break. Anytime you are trained with something, so trained means a +5. So any kind of skill, training usually applies only to skills. It doesn't usually apply to an ability check. It only applies to a skill check, training, +5. If you are trained with weapons, you don't really have training with weapons. You are able to use weapons, and then there are weapons you are not able to use. And if you're not proficient with that weapon, and they use the word proficiency in Star Wars Saga, so you'll be familiar with that. It just means you can use the weapon. Okay, there's no real problems. If you try to do something and you are not trained in a skill, sometimes that is possible and sometimes that's not. It just depends. Some skills can never be done if you're not trained. If you're not trained in something, you cannot do it. And other times you can try things when you're untrained, but there are penalties involved. Okay, let me just have a look at chat and then I will go take a quick break. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, exactly. I think almost all of you would be easy able to transition yourself into playing this game without too much trouble. And I'm going to go over all the actions in the next hour or less than an hour anyway, so you can see exactly how it works. Which is probably going to mean I'm going to get rid of my whiteboard and instead I'm going to be using something else, but I'll explain that in a second. I think you can still find it in some hobby stores and use it find it on eBay. Yes, Star Wars Saga up. So Star Wars Saga, the role-playing game, you'll find down in the description that it is available on a website for free. You don't have to pay for it. You'll probably find a lot of the miniatures are available for free, but you don't have to use miniatures. You could just go Theatre of the Mind if you really wanted to, although this system is probably built for a combat battle mat. It's probably built for that because of the way that you move and so forth. You could probably get away with some of it, but there's so much tied up into using maps and miniatures. You could just use markers and so forth, you know. You can just use dice or lollies or whatever. Yeah, and also too, because there is a free website that has all the rules there, you don't have to go and buy the original book because it will be hard to purchase. I can assure you too that Wizards of the Coast will not be making money off selling Star Wars Saga, the role-playing game, because they no longer own the rights to it. It reverted back to Lucas, and that's it. So they no longer have any of the money coming off that. Just played a board game tonight at my daughter's house. It's by WizKids, okay, called The Yawning Portal. Fun little game. 1 to 4 players or people. Cool. Sounds good. All right, I am going to take a quick break. So that essentially in an hour is how the basics of Star Wars Saga, the role-playing game, works. It is so similar to what you're used to, just with a few things calculated slightly differently or renamed. And that's it, okay? Which means that you could easily transition yourself from your 5e game or your 3.5 game. It'd probably be a little bit more difficult if you're going from D&D 4e. If you're playing Pathfinder, it'll feel fairly natural as well, transitioning into this game because of all of the mechanics are so similar. If you've played any D20 system, it'll feel very similar as well. all of it is very, very similar. So it's not a big stretch. You're not having to try to learn something completely new, really. You kind of just, things are just renamed. Now, I'm going to go take a break. And since we have a little bit of time, I am supposed to be going over basic combat next week, but I won't do that. What I will do is I will go over fairly quickly the basics to combat. That is things like the different actions and what you can do with those different actions so that you can get a better idea of how you feel about the game. Yeah? And also too, so that you don't feel intimidated if you have felt intimidated by all of the mathematical formulas that I gave you for various things a second ago, because that might have been a bit of a turn off. But anyway, yeah, I mean, if I can't see any other way of doing it, because 3.5 is like that too. Even when you look at 5e, it's got a lot of formulas that kind of get confusing at times. Anyway, 5 minutes less and I will be back. All right, stepping back in. Don't go and buy the book. Just go look. There's a free PDF. There's a free PDF, and there's a website that has all the stuff. Don't go and buy the book. It's crazy expensive, the book. It's so hard to get now. Durin, sending you to Yadum. Yes, exactly. Anyway, let's get back into this. Do I want to do that? Yeah. So I will go to the screen in a second, but I thought what I will do is I'll at least go to my face first. You have to put up with my face. Okay, so we went over the basic mechanics. Now we're looking at things like basic combat. So basic combat mechanics. Now, I'm still going to cover basic combat mechanics next week, but very quickly, while I still have enough of my voice left, and I have a little bit of time left, I'm going to go over some of the very basics that you have to deal with. First off, the Game Master determines who is surprised or aware of opponents. So in this game, you actually have what is called a surprise round before you start the first round of combat. And anybody who is surprised or unaware of their opponents, so any combatants who are unaware or surprised, do not get to do anything in the surprise round. They never get to do anything, okay? If your combatant is aware, okay, during the surprise round, they get one action during their surprise round, but they cannot use a full round action. Now, when I say they get one action, there are different actions available in the game. You can perform a standard action, a move action, which means you can move, or a swift action. And swift actions allow you to do a lot of different things. Standard actions, as you may have suspected, are very similar to 3.5, and they are made up of things like making an attack. Yep, but there are a few others as well. But you don't get to do your entire turn, you only get to do one thing. So you have to be very careful and decide what you think is the most useful thing to do if you will manage to surprise the enemy. Then you roll initiative like you would normally roll initiative. You use your initiative bonus, and your initiative bonus is calculated like any other skill. I remember I explained how you calculate your skill modifier. So your initiative is a skill in this game. So you can actually have it increase over time. And the first round starts after the surprise round has been resolved. So the surprise round is not the first round. It's like the 0 round. Yep. You place everybody in order when they've rolled their initiative, which is a 20-sided dice roll. You grab that 20-sided dice and you add your initiative modifier. And you go highest to lowest. You're all familiar with this. You recognize this, right? Highest to lowest goes in round 1, and then the same thing in round 2, and then in round 3. Nice and simple. So that's how you figure it out. Now, the types of actions that you have available are many. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to my other screen so you can see, and I'll use my whiteboard. It's probably going to work better that way. Yes. So I'm going to rub this out. Sorry, I just knocked my microphone. So the different types of actions that we have standard action, move action, swift action, full round action, free action, and a reaction. I will explain them, don't worry. I'm going to break them down for you. So standard action first. Standard action. So what does a standard action look like? Well, it looks a little bit like this. With your standard action, you can make a melee attack against your opponent. So Anakin with his lightsabers could make an attack against an opponent. To do so, you just follow the mechanics that I've explained before. Or Chewbacca can fire with his laser pistol or laser gun at the stormtroopers, make a ranged weapon attack. That is a standard attack, a standard action, sorry. You can also use what is called aid another. Aid another is when you help somebody else in the battle. Now, aid another can be performed by anybody as long as you are ganging up on something else. It is essentially the idea of helping somebody in combat. So aid another is a standard action. So if you use it, you won't be able to make an attack. Attacking an object. So if, for example, Chewbacca decides to shoot the side of the bridge, that would be attacking an object or piece of terrain. Yep. And of course, that would be your standard action, which you only get one standard action. You can charge. Charge is when you move and attack, as you may have expected. Charge is more like you move a lot faster than normal, in fact. So you may not get an attack in, but you certainly will get up close if you have to cover a long distance. Disarm. Disarm is a standard action as well. Disarm is when you want to get rid of the stormtrooper's weapon in their hand and you try to get it out of their hand so it winds up on the ground or in your hands, potentially. Fighting defensively is when you want your reflex defense to be far more effective and you use your standard action. It's kind of like the dodge action to a certain degree in D&D 5e. With Anakin over here, he can attempt to grab a stormtrooper. That's a standard action. Grab kind of doesn't do quite as much as grapple. Grapple is more useful to you, and they are both separated. So you don't grab and grapple are actually different mechanics. So that is your standard actions. I just need some water. Hang on. Oh, hello, Brian Murray. How are you? How's the difficulty level in terms of being a game master for this game? My buddy wants to try his hand at DMing after years of being a PC only. I think you will find it depends on what systems he's played. I would say that if you have played Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, or you've played particularly 3.5, it would be easier. If he's played 3.5, this system he could manage. He'll be familiar with most of it. If you've played 5e, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve. If you've played 4e, it will be a bit of a struggle or two. If you've played some other D20 system that is very heavily built around the 3.5 engine for D&D, it won't be so bad. If you're just doing land stuff, it's not too bad. If you're dealing with something like ship battles and vehicle battles, which is like a whole other thing, it's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt. The good news is, and I didn't actually mention this to you, but for those of you who are looking at Star Wars Saga and thinking, well, this is an old game, I already know 5e, and if I want to play Star Wars, but what if I want to just use the 5e engine? So, Murray, I would suggest you go and point him in the direction of Star Wars 5e. It's free. There are 4 books. The PDFs are free. All of the resources, and it's all built around 5e. So all of your stat blocks for your monsters, your stormtroopers, your vehicles, your spaceships, your character creation, it's all there. There aren't 12 different hero classes to pick from in Star Wars 5e, but Star Wars 5e is an actual thing out there. So you don't necessarily have to play Star Wars Saga. You could go and play Star Wars 5e. And I'm going to come back to Star Wars 5e in the future. I can assure you I'm going to point you in that direction. Why am I going to do that? I'm going to do that because, one, the person who made it has a Patreon, and he can't sell this product. It would be illegal for him to do so. Star Wars 5e. Okay? It's built on Wizards of the Coast engine, which means that, and it's built on the IP from Lucasfilm. So this is a problem for him. So he never makes enough money off it. And there's a lot of people playing it, but not quite as many as like D&D 5e, right? Or Pathfinder. So if they want to do a Star Wars one, you can, people. Just go check out the stuff with just type into the Google Star Wars 5e. And I may even show you that very shortly, because I want to get through this fairly quickly as well today. So don't feel bad. Yes, he's right. Star Wars 5e is awesome. So if he's only played 5e, get him to run Star Wars 5e. All the resources there. So I remember Marvel Superheroes Role-Playing Game. I love that. I love find a copy of that. Yeah, I was trying to find a copy myself. A couple of big free PDFs print in, save the cost. So let me go back to the mechanics of this game again. Okay, let's cover these, and if I have time, maybe I'll pull up Star Wars 5e for you to have a quick look at. How's that sound? Just make sure I'm actually pointing. Yes, you're looking at the screen. So the move action. Move actions. What does move action look like? As you may expect, it's going to be pretty obvious, right? So the move action. Couple of things. You only get one move action on your turn. Okay? To get more than one move action, you have to do other things. But let me explain this. On your move action, you move your speed. In Star Wars Saga, you do not move in feet, you do not move in inches or meters, you move in squares. Everything is calculated. Your speed for your character will probably be 6. That means you can move 6 squares. How does movement in this game work? Very, very simple. If I am here, I can move 6 squares. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you might be wondering, why didn't I move diagonally? Because moving diagonally counts as 2 squares in this game, which is a pain in the butt. I wish they didn't do this, but it's true. So I think adjust the rules for Star Wars Saga so you don't have to move 2 squares for diagonal. So 6 squares would be 1, 2, and I want to go diagonally, so that would be 4, diagonally again, 6. You can see where the problems start to lie when having to do this sort of thing, but that's how movement works in Star Wars Saga when you're moving diagonally with your character. Same sort of thing applies with vehicles as well, which is a pain. Now, if you draw or holster a weapon, so if Chewbacca decides to draw out his pistol, or Luke Skywalker draws out his pistol, that's your move action. Okay, if you put your weapon away, that is a move action. So if you do that, you won't be able to move around. You'll only be able to draw or holster your weapon. If you manipulate an object or an item, so if you have, say, a scanner, so if Luke Skywalker's using a scanner or maybe his rappelling cable, that would be your move action. A standard action, to stand up. If you are prone, lying down on your backside, and you stand up, that's your move action. You can't do anything else with your move action. It's all gone. It's not half your speed, it's all of your speed. Withdrawing. You can withdraw from a battle. So if you're engaged with somebody, so you won't provoke an attack of opportunity, you can use your move to withdraw. Sounds weird, but yes, withdrawing does not provoke attacks of opportunity. Withdrawing allows you to move. Yeah. I know that sounds odd, but it's true. Okay, next one. Let me give you the next one. Let's do this quickly, and I'll point you guys in the direction of Star Wars 5e after this, I think. Swift, almost there. Swift actions. Now, I should be explaining all of these actions in more detail than I have been, but I'm not, because this is not the video for that. That's next week. So, activating an item. If I have a lightsaber and I want to turn the lightsaber on, that is a swift action. You get one swift action during your turn. To be able to get another swift action, you have to give up a move action or a standard action. If I want to aim, I can take my swift action to make it easier to hit my target. By shooting the stormtroopers, I can use a swift action and aim to make sure that I actually hit them. If I lose hit points and I need to regain some, every character in this game can use a second wind. So you can regain hit points as a second wind. You can't do it very often, but you can do it. You get to do that once. So I'm not going to explain the mechanics completely, but that's what you do as a swift action. So that means you can move, attack, use a swift action to use your second wind if you wanted to. You can drop an item on the ground. So if Luke Skywalker drops his pistol on the ground, that's a swift action. It's not a free action, it's a swift action. If you fall prone so you can't be shot at, doing so is a swift action, not a movement. I know that sounds weird. I know it's really strange, people. Recover. Recover if you wind up going down the condition track. So this is kind of like exhaustion in 5e. If you wind up going down the condition track, you can use a swift action to recover. And recovering allows you to reduce the effect of the condition track. If you have a weapon that has different functions on it, say for example a stormtrooper has a blaster pistol, and their pistol is capable of, or a blaster rifle, capable of single shot or automatic fire, and you have to switch between them. So switch weapon mode. If I'm on single shot and I want to switch over to automatic fire and do automatic fire, then I can, but that's a swift action. Okay? Next, the full round action. Let me get you this one here. There aren't too many full round actions, so thankfully I won't have to explain it too much. Full round. Full round. And each of these I will go into far more detail so you know exactly how they work next week. Okay, coup de grace. You may be familiar with coup de grace. Coup de grace is where you are finishing somebody off. So if they're not dead and you have a character that is still alive but they are vulnerable, then you use coup de grace usually to kill them. To kill a character in this game is very difficult. The only way you can really do that is to do damage to reduce them to 0 hit points, and also do enough damage to exceed or equal their damage threshold, which I'll explain some other day. Doing that would kill them. Or they go down to zero hit points, they drop down the condition track, and you move up to them and you decide to do coup de grace. Coup de grace can be done with a melee weapon. You need to be right beside them. And you can also do it with a ranged weapon, but you need to be right beside them. You can't be over here. You need to be right there. You need to be able to shoot them at point blank range to kill Anakin Skywalker. Okay? You can also do a full attack. A full attack is when you get to do more than one attack. Whether that is shooting or making melee attacks, it doesn't matter. When you do a full attack, basically you cannot use a swift action and you can't use a move action. You're only focusing on the one thing. The same thing with coup de grace. Coup de grace is a full round action. You cannot move, you can't use a move action, you can't use a swift action. You can also run. If you decide to run, you run 4 times your speed. So Anakin here can run or move 6 squares. So if I run, I can now move 4 times 6 is 24 squares. So I can move really fast. I can get right out of there. I can bug out. And of course, you still have the free action, which is using your force points. Using force points is a free action. But also, attacks of opportunity is considered a free action. And it does fall into the reaction aspect of things, but it's a free action to do so. And you do it, of course, on somebody else's turn when they do something that's threatening, allows you to threaten them. So that is the basics of combat. As I said, I'm not trying to focus on combat too much today because it just didn't seem like it was sensible. It does seem it would be much more sensible to focus on something that you're that I can give you more detail on, because I will just run out of voice. So now let's just let's see if I can pull up Star Wars. I pull up Star Wars 5e. Oh, David's here. Hello, David. How are you? Dave's.minifx. Dave's.minifx. If you were not aware, I put up a. Let me just change to my face. Sorry about this, people. And then I will show you Star Wars 5e. Okay, and I'll give you the link I'll put it into the chat so you can find it easily. So Dave's minifx. Basically, that's my brother David Bailey. He's been on the channel. He's painted here before. And he's going to be painting again in about a week's time, for those of you who are kind of interested in that sort of thing. He's the one who did the dragon. I put up a short video on Magnus from the Demon Prince of Zench from the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And I also put up a dragon that he made. It's massive. And a lot of people seem to be watching it. I'm glad you are enjoying that miniature. And Dave is the channel you want to go to, or Dave's MiniFX is the channel you want to go to if you want to check him out, because his stuff is pretty cool. And he will be coming onto the channel, as I said, in roughly about a week's time. I believe not this Friday, but next Friday, Dave will be here. I don't know, he hasn't told me what he's going to paint. I've got no idea. But I thought it would be nice to have some painting while I'm on holiday, and Dave will do the painting and I will chat along with him, and then I will go and do my own thing. So pin in comments or description, I see the fandom link. You see the fandom link? Yes, okay. I'll get you the links for that in a second. Just give me a sec, I'll do that. So this is Dave's MiniFX, if you're wondering. If you want to see more of Dave's artwork or his miniature painting, let me know and I'll put up more of the shorts videos, because I actually shot a whole bunch of them. I just haven't released all of them. I just haven't had time to. Now, Fred Hubber, a couple of big free PDFs. Okay, so let's find what you were looking for, which is Star Wars 5e. Star Wars free game, people. Free game. If you don't want to pay for it, you don't have to. It would be nice if you contribute to it if you wind up using a lot of it. This is the website here. Let me just see if I can grab it and show you in the transition here. Properties. Yes. Okay. All right. So my head is just kind of in the way. Let's get myself out of the way. Is that better there? Yeah, let's put myself there. Here we go. So this here is Star Wars 5e. This is the website right here. This is the website you want to go to. Now, as you can see, there are currently 4 books. All of them are PDFs. All of them are free. And they are also got their own website. So there's a website here as well. You can go to the tabs at the top and go to rules. It gives you the rules for it. Player's Handbook, Scum and Villainy, Starships of the Galaxy, Wretched Hives, Variant Rules, Expanded Combat Content. I believe they are working on 2 more books. I don't know how long they'll take to make. Characters, all the stuff around your species, classes, archetypes, backgrounds, feats, all there. Force powers, tech powers, maneuvers, blah, blah, blah. Any kind of loot, so your armor, your weapons, your adventuring gear, your enhanced items, your starships is all here, and you can modify your starships, people. You can build your own starship if you want to. Character creation tools are here as well, and these are... So this is what he's done is he's not just made a PDF of all the books. He's also made a hyperlinked website that allows you to go to whatever you need to go to find whatever you're looking for, to give you all the information that you need. I won't go through too much of it, but you get the gist of that. And each book has a different theme, okay? So the Player's Handbook gives you everything you need for Star Wars. Scum and Villainy includes a whole lot of monsters and villains. Basically, it's your NPCs and monsters. So Starships of the Galaxy is got your vehicles, starships, space stations, gives you the rules for space adventuring and space combat, which is very different to land-based combat, okay? Even in this game. Wretched Hives is basically... it's your downtime activities, running factions, introducing enhanced items. So it's modifying stuff. So he hasn't got everything that Star Wars Saga has, but I can assure you that there's enough there to get by for quite a while, for those of you who are interested. Now, I'm going to just jump over here. I'm going to give you the link now to this. If you go to the characters that we made in... when we were making Star Wars characters, I actually had links in the bottom for everything that you needed to get access to. So I believe I can probably pull most of that up now. It's just give me a second and I'll see if I can find those videos. So yeah, if you're ever feeling like, Star Wars Saga is too much of a jump, Fred. I don't want to learn a completely new system because I've already learned 5e. I don't want to go and learn something else. I totally understand. So go and play something that uses the 5e engine, but it's not even Wizards of the Coast's or Hasbro's property. It's not even Lucas. If you're pissed with Lucasfilm or Disney, it's not even theirs. They're not going to benefit in any way from this. But you will. I can assure you, you'll definitely benefit from this. There are a lot of free games that I could talk about that I haven't really shown people, and I assure you I will at some point show you all of the stuff around this. Let's see if I can find the character sheet as well, where I got it. I've checked this character sheet is not full of viruses, by the way, if you're wondering. Let me just drop this in here. I'll see you later, Ancient. If you had to go, I'm sorry. I'm just going to pump all this information in here so you can grab it. Next, where's the other one that I wanted to grab here? Is it the fandom one? No, it's the book. I think this is... Yes, this is another website. The fandom website is not the only website that you can use. You probably want to use the official Star Wars 5e website. It costs him a lot of money to run that website, by the way, for those of you who are wanting to help him. Helping the guy who's built it and the people around that through that Patreon, I'm sure he would appreciate it. And if you find that you really like what they've done and you keep going back to it, then maybe throw them some money. You know what I mean? This is not sponsored, by the way. He has no idea. He probably wouldn't care that I'm doing this anyway. So let me just grab some water because I'm losing my voice. Yes, Overboard Dave has been here before, and he will be returning, as I said, in a week's time. Time to slumber. Thanks, Thanks, David. You know this is the same hat I always use. Needs to be more Gandalf. I want to play Dark Heresy. We'll get around to Dark Heresy at some point, David. Just it's not going to happen until I figure out what I'm doing. Yes, I know. So you're going to London, isn't it? In about 4 weeks' time. It's all right. David's going to be on the channel before he leaves, so don't worry. He's coming back. I convinced him. Now, I'm not far from London, Fred. If you get stuck, I need any help, give me a shout. Well, you're going to have to... So, you need to tell them who you are on the Discord, by the way. Otherwise, they won't know. You can have these books printed, but you have to do some tricks with the wording when you send it to the printers companies. Yes, I bet you do. Yes, you probably could get it printed out. I'm pretty sure you can find there is a PDF out there that's in reasonable good condition too. Yeah, I have no. Except visit the Warhammer world. I'm happy to visit the Warhammer world. You know, if it is a fantasy Warhammer sort of thing, that would be great. I'd be right into it. Let's go visit the Warhammer fantasy world. Because Warhammer fantasy is dark, grim, and cool. Do Jedis have auto defense against blaster fire? No, they don't. Jedis can die. Sorry, buddy. Sorry. Okay, so I should probably shut up the stream, but what I thought I would do is... I haven't mentioned it completely to you, but maybe I should. Is it close by? Yes, it is. Right about there. Okay. So next week I'm going to return and we'll go over Star Wars Saga, and that is basic combat. And I'll go into a lot more detail. We'll go back to maps and miniatures and all that sort of thing. So if you are enjoying that aspect of it and the demonstration side of things, please let me know in feedback whether there's things I can improve. Okay, I have a piece of paper in front of me. This piece of paper in front of me I've been hanging on to for a long time. I had intended to talk more about it, but this piece of paper is really important. It's the sort of thing that you may change your mind about how you approach things. For those of you who are happy to go and play a completely new system, fine, go play those new systems. Hopefully I will eventually learn how to play them myself, but it's going to take a long time. For those of you who are happy and still want to just keep playing 5e, but you don't want to play Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and you don't want to go and buy some of the third-party stuff because it's not really what you wanted, and you don't want to go and buy Wizards of the Coast stuff, there's a bunch of stuff here that I found. Apparently, somebody has made World of Avatar, The Last Airbender 5e. So there's a supplement out there. That's right, you can play an airbender. You can play in the airbender world. The World of Avatar, The Last Airbender 5e. There is actually a PDF out there of this product. It is free. It does not belong to anybody. So you could definitely muck with this. I am happy to talk about that at some point in the future when I get a chance. There's also Dungeons and Dragons 5e League of Legends. So there's a compatible League of Legends campaign book or handbook for League of Legends, and it's 5e compatible. And it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. For those of you who like playing Mass Effect, the video game, there is a Mass Effect 5e compatible PDF out there. And it looks very professional. All of these are actually in really well developed. Star Wars 5e is one of the most developed 5e compatible free supplements that exist. And you can use a lot of this with your existing books. Okay? Getting the firewood ready. No problems. You go sort out the firewood. There is Wands and Wizards, a Harry Potter 5e adaptation. So for those of you who like Harry Potter, there is an adaptation for that using the 5e system. For those of you who remember Flash Gordon, there is a Flash Gordon 5e document out there, and it's free and it's a PDF. There is Final Fantasy, which version is this? Final Fantasy something. It's a compendium for 5e. So it's all designed around 5e, but it's Final Fantasy. There is Monster Hunter, the Monster Manual. So for those of you who want to go and hunt the monsters from the Monster Hunter video game, you can actually get a Monster Manual for Monster Hunter for 5e, and that's free. Can you light a campfire in the space with only one way to find out? I have no idea. For those of you who like Super Mario Brothers, there is a Super Mario 5e compatible PDF out there, and it's an all right. It's not the best one, but it's all rightish, I'd say. For those of you who like The Legend of Zelda, well, there's actually a document for that as well. Breath of the Wild, it's 5e compatible, and it's free. All of these things are free. For those of you who wanted Stranger Worlds, I don't understand what the heck Stranger Worlds is, but it does exist, and it is, I think, mostly 5e compatible, and I'm pretty sure it's free as well. For those of you who like Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, there is a Dragon Ball D&D 5e compatible document out there, and it's free, and it's in PDF form, and it's not too bad. There is a Warhammer 40,000 5e compatible document out there. Yes, that's right, Michael. Wands and Wizards. For those of you who like Harry Potter and you want to play in a Harry Potter world, you can. It's already been done for you. You do not have to play in Strixhaven. Okay? So yes, Wands and Wizards for Harry Potter 5e is out there. For those of you who are patrons here or just want to use the chat, you can let me know which ones you like the most, and maybe I'll do it sooner. You know I'm more likely to do it if a patron tells me. So that's Warhammer 40,000 5e compatible document, and it's free. Doesn't cost you a cent. There is a Plane Shift Equestria. Now, somebody's mentioning My Little Pony. Yes, there is a My Little Pony 5e PDF out there. That's true. Elder Scrolls 5e exists. It's free. Doesn't cost you a cent. So there are a lot of systems out there that you can play with that are very similar to 5e. Some of them have been tweaked because 5e's not is not a tough game to play, really. It's not gritty, and sometimes people have had to put that gritty aspect into it. Do you know what I mean? So yes, you'll let me know what you like the sound of. Okay. Do Jedi have? Oh no. We said that. I'm a wise man from Terra on Discord, Dave, and yes, that's right. He is a wise man. Okay. All right. So you guys are talking about meeting up. Anyone heard of Rage of Heroes? I will be painting up a scaled up version of one of the minis next week with Fred. Oh, is it going to be Rage of Heroes? So Rage of Heroes was the heroes that were standing around the big dragon that you saw in the shorts that I put up just recently, people. Okay, I think we have done with Star Wars and today, and I need to go to work. Tomorrow, what is tomorrow? I am going to be reviewing and flicking through the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook for 2nd Ed Edition. For those of you who are into 2nd Ed Edition Player's Handbook, that's what I'm doing. Okay? So we are done for today. I am exhausted. So a huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who took part in the poll today, and everybody who's been using the chat and asking questions, and everybody who's just been watching. It really does help. By you watching, I know that I need to keep going with what I'm doing, because sometimes it's a little rough. If you're rewatching, thank you very much. Sorry, I've got the hiccups now. So wherever you are in the world, and whatever part of the universe you live in, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. May the force be with you, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.